Justin Fields is him. And frankly, I'm getting sick and tired of hearing people with lazy takes about how he's inaccurate, how he's not going to throw for a lot of yardage, how he can be judged off of what he did in 2022 with no weapons, and the weapons he did have were injured. And instead of saying, he did a lot with a little, he carried the team on his back, and instead of totally failing via the run and the pass, he ended up succeeding on the ground, being very impressive in keeping his team in games. I'm going to briefly talk about Justin Fields from my perspective, and then we're going to replay a very heated debate on the last live stream where we had some negativity on Justin Fields. We had a caller call in. I give him credit for calling in, but he just didn't convince me, and I want to know if you're convinced, if you feel what he felt, that Justin Fields is not going to translate at the next level. It's head-scratching to me, and I have some bold predictions to make about the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields in 2023. The Fantasy Football Show begins right now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Take a lap.
Justin Fields is him. He is him. Justin Fields put this team on his back last year. And while I admit that Ryan Poles dismantled this whole squad and made it a skeleton crew, dismantling the defense, dismantling the offense, putting Fields in a very vulnerable position, a position that got him hurt in 2022, carrying this team on his back, running too much, getting injured. Thank God he escaped season-ending knee injuries and things that could have taken him out for 2023. And we're right here now watching Ryan Poles turn this team around in one offseason. The Bears have arguably the best offseason so far in 2023. You can argue the Lions, and that's going to be a battle. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the Bears have improved more than any team in the National Football League, in my opinion, in this offseason. Getting DJ Moore, still having the number 9 overall pick to draft JSN, an offensive lineman, one of the best defensive players in the draft, maybe Bijan Robinson, all of which will be phenomenal. If the team does go JSN, they can address the offensive line in the later rounds. You can coach up offensive line more than you can coach up a wide receiver that's 4 or 5 or 6 to be a Jackson Smith and Jigba. You can coach up a second round offensive lineman way more than trying to coach up a player, a running back in the second or third round, or any running back in free agency into being Bijan Robinson. In fact, it's impossible. Bijan Robinson is generational. So while I don't think the Bears need to address the running back position in free agency, they can take Bijan, they can take Zach Charbonnet in round 2. They may address it. They may address it through a trade. Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, all available players, all available via trade if the Bears want to surrender a second round pick, something higher or lower than that territory. The Bears are not done. They have an entire draft and the number 9 overall pick to continue to impress. DJ Moore is a top 12 wide receiver that's been trapped in a bad situation from the beginning of time. Maybe he finishes 14, 13, 15. The wide receivers from like 11 to 15 will be very close. I'm not like going to count on it's going to be exactly top 11, top 12 numbers, but this guy's going to produce top 15 wide receiver numbers, and his presence alone is going to make Cole Kmet become an absolute steal in 2023 fantasy football. In fact, I'm going to do a tight end video. A sleeper tight end video is coming, and Cole Kmet's going to be one of the bigger players I talk about outside the top 10 that could crack the top 5 to 7 for tight ends in 2023. We'll get to that in another video, but know that I love Cole Kmet. Know that I love Darnell Mooney when he's back healthy in his role of being not the number 1 option, but a guy that can take advantage of defensive attention going toward the 1. DJ Moore's the 1. DJ Moore stretching the field. Stretching the field is going to make the offensive line improve just like that. I'm not saying all the offensive line problems go away with DJ Moore. What I'm saying is what I predicted with Jamar Chase stretching the field, being the better pick than Sewell. Jamar Chase indirectly helping the offensive line more than Penny Sewell being drafted could help the offensive line directly. You heard me right. I said it to Coach Hugh Jackson. I said it to a lot of people that balked at me. Jamar Chase helps Joe Burrow, protects Joe Burrow more than drafting Penny Sewell does, and he's an offensive linemen. The same thing's happening right here. DJ Moore stretching the field is going to instantly improve the offensive line production because now you have less 8-man fronts. You have a defense being spread out. Having DJ Moore stretch the field is going to allow Justin Fields to rip off 15, 20-yard runs untouched and run right out of bounds because he can run out of bounds before a safety or cornerback can reach him. Field is stretched out. He could be more efficient on the ground than last year, even if he runs a lot less. To argue that Fields doesn't have all of the tools he needs to be a top 5 quarterback or even a top 3 to 5 quarterback is a crazy argument, if you ask me. And I'm going to say this one thing before we jump right into the debate. The replay of a video on the last live stream that just is too valuable to not throw out here as a compartmentalized video. The last thing I'm going to say right now before playing that clip is that I expect the Chicago Bears to win the division. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you why it's not crazy. At the end of the video, I'm going to tell you why people laughed at the same prediction about the Bengals. Me talking about the Bengals winning the division before they even drafted Jamar Chase. Talking about the Bengals being a Super Bowl contender that year when they draft Jamar Chase and they march into a Super Bowl appearance. I love the Lions. I think the Lions and the Bears will have a dogfight for the division win. I think it could even come down to a tiebreaker. I think this division's very deep. I think the Vikings will show up during the regular season, fold during the playoffs or during the final wild card push. But it's a tough division. The Vikings are tough. The Green Bay Packers, I think, will be a lot tougher than people think. I think Jordan Love will show up. But ultimately, it's the Lions versus the Bears. And I have Justin Fields, who we talk about on the show being one of the favorites to win NFL MVP in 2023. I have Justin Fields in the Chicago Bears winning the division. I have Justin Fields, buckle up. I hope you're sitting down. I have Justin Fields and the Bears going to the NFC Championship game to face off against either the Eagles or the 49ers. I love Justin Fields in 2023. It's time to adjust and adapt. It's time to recognize an elite player that carried this team on his back with no wide receivers or weapons. And if you bring up, oh, he wasn't accurate, Smitty. He just wasn't accurate, Smitty. If you bring that up, I'm going to know you don't know what you're talking about because this is a quarterback who had to scramble. His receivers weren't open. His bad receivers weren't even healthy to throw to. And receivers running the wrong routes, getting to the end of his progression and nobody being open, having to tuck and run, and still keeping his team in a competitive place. To not see the correlation to Josh Allen coming out of his rookie year and his sophomore year. Josh Allen was further behind than Justin Fields, and I said Josh Allen would be a top 1 to 5 quarterback before he took a snap in the NFL. He was in worse shape in terms of his progression and becoming a quarterback we knew he'd become. I knew he'd become. He was further away from that than Fields was or is right now at the same stage of Josh Allen's trajectory. Jalen Hurts was doubted, called inaccurate. He'll never be good. He better be good with A.J. Brown. This is Smitty. This is his last chance. Now that he has A.J. Brown, he better do good. We heard this about Hurts all offseason long heading into 2022 when we had him on the Moonmen list and we said he'd win you leagues in the 6th round. We heard this about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. If you can't keep Joe Burrow, Smitty, you can't keep Joe Burrow upright. He can't throw to Chase. We heard this about Burrow. We heard this about the Bengals. We heard this about the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. We heard this about, oh, well, he got Diggs. Okay, well, that's why. Excuse after excuse. Oh, A.J. Brown goes to the Eagles. Well, no one's talking about DJ Moore and the 9 overall pick that could be JSN. It could be Bijan. It could be offensive lineman Charbonnet in round 2. And those will be excuses for the people laying all kinds of hate and shade on Fields and the Bears right now. They're not done. That's known right now. That's not a surprise. You should know this. The Bears aren't done. And here's the debate that I think is worth watching again because it's straight fire. No, you said something a little more harsh than that. You said Fields is garbage or trash? What did you say?
I didn't actually mean that. What I mean is I don't think Fields is going to finish top 5.
But
I think Fields is a top 10.
But you got it.
I think Rodgers could finish ahead of him. I think Watson and Love could both.
But bro, you did say let me find it because I just want to address it because this is part of the problem. Is people come in and they say Fields stinks. Fields stinks is what you said.
I think that was more for the reaction of the chat.
Okay, so you're one of those. Okay, here's the problem, bro. With everything you said, I'm not saying you don't have an argument to be made. I just disagree with it. But that's okay. That's why we play the game.
It's because people overestimate Chicago is the problem.
Bro, they're going to win the division, in my opinion. They're going to win the division, in my opinion. This is a team that this is a team that had no identity. This is a team that had no weapons. This is a team that the weapons were even hurt and it had no weapons. They have Cole Kmet, who I think is going to be a sneaky top 5, 6, 7 tight end in fantasy football 2023. He's my Darren Waller Hawkinson from a couple years back when I had them ranked higher according to Fantasy Pros than any analyst in the entire fantasy industry. So I had a Hawkinson and Waller so high in my rankings. It was that when they wrote the article on, who finished highest in this and this and this, and I was number 1 in tight end rankings that year. I was number 1 in tight end rankings over 2018, 2019, and 2020 average. So Kmet's that guy. And Fields is going to potentially lean on him hardcore, especially with DJ Moore stretching the field. I am excited. Peanut Butter Waivers, mute if you could until you jump on here. I think Fields getting DJ Moore, getting Mooney back healthy, playing his number 2 role, and potentially, like I said, they're not done yet, bro. What if they draft Jackson Smith and Jigba with this number 9 overall pick? What are you gonna say then? That it's different now? Okay, this is similar to what people said when Hurts got AJ Brown. All the people said that Hurts sucked.
But Hurts threw for 1,000 than Fields did. That's why,
bro. The doubt behind Jalen Hurts was way crazier negative than it is about Fields. So it was people love Fields right now. Jalen Hurts, everyone and their mother came in talking about inaccurate. He and then when he got AJ Brown, it's like he better do well here or he's done. Like this. Now everybody loves him. He's a golden boy, and all I'm saying is you have this. And so what do people say? Oh, well, that's why he's good because AJ Brown. He might be good because AJ Brown's there. So what are you going to say when they draft Jackson Smith and Jigba? What are you going to say when they draft Bijan Robinson here? What are you going to say if they draft, let's say, one of the best defensive players in the league, or offensive line? A lot of people think offensive line. Let's say they draft offensive line, and in round 2 they draft Zach Charbonnet, or let's say Jahmyr Gibbs falls because he's smaller and he goes there. Like, what are you going to say then, though? Because they're not done.
I mean, what I'm going to say is that Fields hasn't proven anything.
How? How is he not proven anything?
What he has proven is that he's a fantastic runner. I don't even think the Hurts comparison is as accurate, I would say, as comparing him more so to Lamar.
Why don't you
Lamar, like Fields, is a really good runner, but Hurts is way more of an elite passer than Fields. That's why I don't get the comparison.
Bro, compare him to Josh Allen. Because Josh Allen had no weapons. Josh Allen was thought of as just a one-trick pony. Josh Allen was talked about how his accuracy was bad. Josh Allen had more to work on than Fields. Josh Allen was so, and I love Josh Allen. I called him top 1 to 5 before he took an NFL snap. That quarterback's in my wheelhouse, bro. I saw it coming. This is not something that I'm saying that I doubted him, but people doubted him. And bro, Fields is so much further along than Josh Allen was coming out of the same year. And at the same level that Fields is at, Fields is way ahead of Josh Allen where he was. Way ahead. It took Josh Allen his 3rd year. His 1st year, he was all running. His 2nd year, he was as inaccurate as can be. And nobody believed in him. And now look at Josh Allen now. He's an amazing quarterback, top 3, top 4 lock in everyone's mind, NFL and fantasy. Fields is way ahead of Josh Allen. And Fields had no weapons. And when someone says, no offense, that's fire, I appreciate you again. But when someone says that he's inaccurate, I don't know how to respond to that anymore because he had nobody to throw the football to. You would be inaccurate too if you were running around trying to hit players on the reads. The reads and the routes have already been run. People are running around with their heads cut off, like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to get open for this guy Fields, who's scrambling around. He has no weapons. So back to my question.
To be fair to Fields, I'd never be playing in the NFL. So that's something that I'll always have over me. To be fair, all these guys are talented players. I'm just trying to make the argument that his current ADP, He's too high.
Smitty.
It's not though. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Philly here.
Philly.
Okay. I got the stats right in front of me, okay? New England, 179 yards and a touchdown. Not that great, but New England has a great defense. That was at New England. At Dallas, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is passing. I ain't even into his rushing yet. Miami, not that bad of a defense. 123 yards and 3 touchdowns. Detroit, pretty bad defense, but, whatever. 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is all in a row. 23 fantasy points, 26, 42, 39, 22. Philadelphia, pretty good defense. 152 and 2 touchdowns. Now let's go to rushing. We got 90, 82 against New England, 60 against Dallas, 178 against Miami, 147 against Detroit, 95 against Philly. That's some pretty good stats for a guy that didn't have anyone to work with.
And let me pile it on a little more, and then that's fire.
Not throwing over 200 yards in every single one of those games. Great stats.
That's fire. Why aren't you're turning to the only negative you can find? Explain to me this touchdown total right here. 2, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, he had 0. Back to 2. Like, he's constantly scoring touchdowns. On top of that, how inaccurate can you be, bro? First of all, thank you for whoever just dropped that super chat. Let me look for it real quickly. Hold on and address it. Hang tight. That's fire. I got a point here I want to make. Ron Navy, barely hear the caller, Smitty. It's because the phone line's broken again. I got to fix it. I'll fix it by the 7 p.m. show. It's hard to know if it's broken until I'm already live. So it sucks. Let's see here. How can you be, when you say he's inaccurate and then you have a problem with his stat line, can you explain this to me and tell me what your explanation is? All right, there we go. I'm going to show you a stat. The guy played 15 games. I'm going to show you a very, very predictive stat for inaccuracy and playing bad for a guy that plays 15 games. 11 interceptions. How is he an inaccurate quarterback when he's throwing only 11 interceptions? He's obviously making good enough decisions and reads. This is what this tells me. That when you have 11 interceptions,
I disagree.
When you have 11 interceptions and you're coined as an inaccurate bad quarterback, it's receivers running the wrong routes. It's the play getting compromised. It's throwing bad passes, maybe, yes. When you're scrambling because your receivers didn't get open and everybody's injured and no one's effective and you're throwing incompletions because it's all you can do. You're trying to survive and carry the team on your back. DJ Moore.
One of the worst offensive lines.
Isaac, appreciate your super chat.
We're talking about a guy who's probably throwing the ball, max 32 times a game because he's running. And the other point that I would make is if he is going to be getting more passing yards in 2023, 2024, he's not going to be running as much. So you better hope that DJ Moore and these other guys that they bring in are going to lift up his passing game like so many people predict. Bro, if they don't, he might even be worse.
Bro, I got a clip. I'm going to hit replay on an old clip.
Smitty.
Here it is. Oh, hold on. Here's an old clip. Okay, this is of somebody yelling at me about Hurts. Hey, Smitty, this is old clip guy. Jalen Hurts, you better hope that A.J. Brown does something for Jalen Hurts' accuracy. You better hope that things turn around for Jalen Hurts now that he has weapons. This is his last shot. This is his last chance. This is the same old thing. This is why Hurts is such a good comparable, bro. Josh Allen's good comparable in terms of skill set. Situationally, Fields had nobody. What more can I say to get you to stop saying, oh, he threw inaccurate passes. He didn't throw the football well. He didn't score enough. He didn't have good yardage. He was scrambling for his life. And instead of failing, bro, think of it from this perspective. You have no weapons. You're having a tough time just surviving. And instead of failing, you still do very well and you figure out a way to be a one-man band and run the football and still carry the team on your back. Maybe it's frustrating. Maybe you're losing, but you're keeping your team in it. You could easily say, oh, this guy folded all the way around. He didn't. He stepped up, and instead of saying, hey, he did so good running, I wonder what he'll do with DJ Moore and Kmet being open now, not being a focal point, because Kmet was like literally his only option for a little while. Kmet's going to have all day long to run a route and get open with DJ Moore stretching the field, who is a top 12 wide receiver that's been trapped in a situation without an elite quarterback. So we truly don't even know how good DJ Moore can be. But instead of saying, oh, this guy survived and ran and didn't fold, you're critiquing the one part of his game that he had no ability to excel at. It's and for the sake.
Darnell Mooney was 5'11", 173 pounds in his second year, and that was his wide receiver one. Give the guy a freaking break.
Not to mention that, like, you could say the offensive line struggled. They got the 9 overall pick. Hold on 1 second. I'll let you make your point. They got the 9 overall pick. They might draft offensive linemen. They're going to obviously address offensive linemen in the draft. They made a lot of cuts and freed up a lot of money, creating holes on purpose that put Fields in very big risk of injury situation. Let's just put it that way. They compromised Fields' health by getting rid of everybody, cleaning house, and literally sending him out there with a skeleton crew. Okay, that's what he did. But they're rebuilding at a rapid pace, and it's all coming together. And if there's one thing that I can emphasize, if anybody is watching and they want to take away one piece of information that I think resonates over every situation that relates to this, and keep this in mind for the rest of your fantasy football careers. When you have a better offense that can stretch the field and spread out a defense, your offensive line improves immediately. It's not that it's going to be perfect. It's not going to be the top 5 offensive line in the NFL just because of that reason. But stretching the field and spreading out a defense, instead of everybody saying, let's spy and stack the box against Fields because there's no weapons to get open. The offensive line improves probably by double. Without even drafting a player or replacing a player, the offensive line improves by double just by having an offense that can stretch the field.
People need to stop thinking about the
past.
Like Colin Cowherd talks about this a lot. He talks about the linebackers are not the face of the Bears anymore, okay? It's all about the offense and Justin Fields.
I think people need to stop living in the past. I think people need to start...
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I can guarantee you that no offense, Just Fire, but I can almost guarantee you, and you could lie to me, that you were either a hardcore doubter of Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, maybe you still are, or you were a hardcore doubter about Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And if Joe Burrow and the Bengals can turn things around, and you can have Jalen Hurts and the Eagles turn things around, and you have a very similar situation going on. It's not a different situation. There's different components, but overall, the Chicago Bears are having probably the most phenomenal offseason out of any team in the National Football League. You could say the Detroit Lions look phenomenal too. They're doing a great job. But the Chicago Bears have improved their team more than any team in the National Football League. And they had a lot of room to climb, so you could argue, they needed that. But they're not done yet. They have the number 9 overall pick. And if they take Jackson Smith-Njigba or Bijan or offensive line and Zach Charbonnet in round 2 or wherever, I can't wait to hear a Bears hater come in and speak on this topic and say to me, now that they have that player, of course they're better. If he doesn't do good now, he's definitely going to.
I'm excited to come back because I really don't think you guys are correct.
Well, clearly.
The receivers that he was throwing to were like ranked 40 to 50. Aquemius St. Brown, Mooney got
hurt. Claypool got. They're all hurt. They got hurt. They didn't even have those guys.
Trash.
He didn't even have those guys, bro. That's my even greater point. The other thing too is that the other thing too is to assume that the Bears won't trade for Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, or Austin Eckler, or bring in Kareem Hunt at the running back position. To assume that won't happen in addition to using this number 9 overall pick on a very good player and maybe even drafting Charbonnet, to assume that all those things are still like not going to happen is crazy to me. Real quickly, let me answer these 2 super chats from Isaac. Isaac to the moon.
To the moon.
Appreciate you, Isaac. This is Khalil Herbert has the talent to be a top 8 running back, but Chicago uses him like James Cook or Madison. They'll likely draft another RB. I agree with that. And the fact that Foreman's projected as a starter by a lot of outlets, I don't know that I fully agree, but I think it's certainly looking likely in some ways. Josh Allen got Diggs. Lamar was better than Josh Allen until 2020 when Diggs arrived. Lamar never had Diggs caliber. Great wide receivers make great QBs. To a degree, I agree that Lamar, I don't think he's better than Josh Allen personally, but I agree with what you're saying, and I'm a big defender of Lamar if he can get himself into a situation like Miami or Indianapolis or New England with Jackson Smith and Jigba or New England with Hopkins. And on the topic of Hopkins real quick, he's still a possibility for Chicago. If Hopkins goes to Chicago for a second-round pick and they draft an offensive lineman, I can't wait to see the Bear haters come back. Or they won't even come back. I honestly don't think that's fire you'll call back in. If they trade for Hopkins, draft offensive line, or trade for Hopkins, draft Bijan, and then draft an offensive line later, or take offensive line and Charbonnet and trade for Hopkins using a second, I don't think you're calling in.
You guys can keep manifesting it into existence, but until it happens,
in 2022.
This is what people said about the Bengals, bro. It's the same thing.
2022 had more 50. He had more 50-yard runs in that one season than any quarterback did in their career.
He doesn't want to hear. He doesn't want to hear that, though.
The point that Justin Fields is going to be throwing more is valid. But when he runs, that's valuable. It will be big plays. It will be big plays. Looking at the back of his jersey all year, bro. All year, the back of his jersey, bro.
To assume that he is going to run a lot less and not compensate in throwing yards and touchdowns is kind of, I think, a tough take to accept, in my opinion. And to assume that he can't run for near as much yardage and touchdown production on a more efficient amount of attempts because the defense is spread out, I pretty much guarantee you'll see a couple 100-yard games from Fields, even though they may be throwing more, because DJ Moore and will be spreading that defense out. You'll have safeties much deeper. You'll have cornerbacks playing off the line of scrimmage, unlike before. And you'll have Fields literally running a 15, 20-yard scamper untouched and run out of bounds, upright, healthy as can be. He's going to have a lot of those 15-yard rips. And I think at the end of the day, his rushing stats might not be all that much lesser because he's going to be more efficient. He's going to have less people chasing him around the field when he rips off a 15, 20-yard run. So I don't think that more passing is necessarily a negative to his rushing. And I think that if he does drop in rushing production, he more than makes up for it in passing yardage and touchdowns. I just think bottom line is this, and then we'll end it here. And I'm gonna go eat. I'm gonna drop everybody off, give everybody 10, 15 seconds to speak. So let me start by saying this. To assume that any quarterback is where they need to be at the stage that Fields is in, which was the same thing said about Jalen Hurts at the stage that Fields is currently in. The same thing said about Josh Allen and Joe Burrow at the stage that Fields is currently in. It is, in my opinion, a very bad take that is hard to accept, support, or even understand when you're drawing conclusions about the player already and they haven't even had an opportunity. Fields has not had his opportunity yet. He was asked to do everything on the ground. What do you do for work? That's fire. You don't have to tell me where you work, but what kind of work is it?
I work in finance.
Okay, what if you were told to go out and you have no bankers on the floor in a bank, let's say. I don't know where you work, if it's a bank situation or what, just assume you do. And you're supposed to work 7 different people that are waiting in the lobby. And you're hitting home runs with the people you're dealing with, but you're asked to do all that work. Do you think it's fair for somebody to come in and say, without any support, this is what you are going to do? Every time you go to work, for your next employer or your next year that you come in, we're going to say this is all you're going to do. You're going to literally run a pretty bad operation. Yeah, you did well doing this and that, but you're one-dimensional because you didn't take care of everybody fast enough. You didn't deliver on the numbers. You couldn't churn out the production. If you're like the branch manager of a bank and you're being judged by having one banker, you're being judged for having one banker or one finance guy when you've got a line out the door and you're the branch manager being judged for that. And the next year coming in, you're going to have 3 bankers instead of 1. You're going to have 2 more tellers than normal. You're going to have an extra treasury person. And now you're being told you're going to do the same numbers and pump out the same production. It's essentially what you're arguing. You're giving Fields no opportunity at all. You've said on the screen, I have it here. You said, and I know you said you were kind of elaborating here, or you're exaggerating. You said Fields stinks. And a lot of what you're saying is backing that up. And I'm okay with you having a different opinion. I give you mad respect for calling in. And you and I don't have to agree, bro. I had strong arguments for Trey Lance last year, and Trey Lance busted. And it wasn't all his fault, all that, but it doesn't matter.
He kind of also got injured.
Right. But I was passionate. I was passionate about that. Didn't work out. So I'm not saying I bet my life that I'm going to be right over your argument. But I would say that out of my experience of doing this, I'm telling you, Fields is it. Fields is not only it, but we haven't even scratched the surface yet. And he's got all the tools he needs to win the division. And I'm telling you right now, Fields and the Detroit Lions, the Bears and Lions, it's going to be a dogfight, potentially a tiebreaker situation to win the division. All right, man. Hey, call back anytime. I appreciate the debate. You're a polite person. You're not disrespectful. At least you weren't on the phone. I don't know about it in the chat. The chat can judge that. But props for calling in and being respectful and having a good debate instead of a crazy, like, disrespectful one. So hats off to you. Drop a fire emoji for that's fire. And call in anytime, pal. I mean, D-Town, you seem shocked. You said Bears in the Super Bowl, ? I mean, you heard what Peanut Butter just said, that he's the odds favorite, people betting money to be the NFL MVP. So to say that he couldn't make a Super Bowl appearance, people said the same thing about the Bengals, bro. They said the same thing about the Bengals. The Bengals win the division. The Bengals make the playoffs. Do you know how many crazy looks I got when I said those things, D-Town? A lot. I went into a clubhouse audio discussion with a bunch of bettors, and I raised my hand. I waited my turn. There's about 50 people in there. And I said to him, this is before the Bengals won the division. Before they drafted Jamar Chase. And I said to him, you guys should incorporate fantasy football and fantasy sports into your betting, arsenal, into your skill set. And they're like, nah, we don't play fantasy or whatever. We just bet. And I said, if you played fantasy, you'd be able to be predictive with your bets. Instead of a professional bettor doesn't play fantasy, he's going off of last year's stats. He's doing what That's Fire does. Say, Fields was inaccurate last year. I'm not going to bet on the Bears. So they said, give us an example. And so in a room full of 50 people that are professional, some of them hardcore bettors, they're in there every night talking about this bet, that bet. They're constantly doing it. I said, you guys want a bold take of how fantasy football enables me to see something you guys can't see? Because I'm in the what's around the corner situation, and that's my skill set. You guys are in what happened last year. Let's try and bet on it. And they said, go ahead, give us something. I said, the Bengals will win the division. I said, the Bengals will win that. Oh, bro, the room clowned me. They laughed me to the end of, they were laughing for like 10 minutes. They were giggling. They thought it was a joke. They're like, this is why a fantasy guy, people look at fantasy guys and they say fantasy guys don't know anything about real football. Like, that's a naive take, because in order to be good at fantasy, you have to know everything that the person that only knows football has to know and more. We don't just know fantasy and don't understand real football. It's the other way around. We understand real football as much as anybody. And then, or at least people that delve in it like, I do, and some of you that are hardcore with it. And then fantasy. They don't. And so I said, Bengals are winning. They laughed. It was 10 minutes giggling. This guy is a fantasy guy. He doesn't know real football. One guy, bro, I forget who it is, and I think he's probably watching right now because he called in once, and I forget who it was. Does anybody remember when he called in? In the chat, if you remember, he called in and says, Smitty, I was in that clubhouse chat of yours. And the guy, I hope he's watching right now and he can call in. He said, I was in that clubhouse chat of yours, and I was the only guy, and I put a bunch of money put like $500 on the Bengals to win the division or something like that. It was a pretty decent amount. I forget the exact amount. Dude made bank on the Bengals winning the division. He also put them, I think I said they could win, they could be a Super Bowl show. He put something on it. I think he rolled it into the Bengals winning the Super Bowl, and he lost it all, which was a crazy story. But the dude made bank on it, and everyone else sat there and laughed. Do you know what? And I'm not trying to just toot my own horn or pat my own back, but they said that they talk about me in that chat all the time. That they go in and they say, remember when Smitty came in and predicted the Bengals to win the division? And so my whole point is that when D-Town says something like this, Bears, the Super Bowl, and it actually puts an exclamation point on there. Bro, I've heard this before, and I'll hear it again. And this is a predictive business, and we see it happen all the time. And I'll leave you on that. Peanut Butter and Waivers, I appreciate you, my man. Calling at 7 p.m.
All right, man. Have a good day.
Later. Guys, I'll see you later. Appreciate you dialing in. Appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.